Son of a bitch.
Welcome back to The Manual, the podcast where we talk about the stuff most men's podcasts are too afraid to touch. Today's episode is going to be wild, raw, and real. Buckle up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to The Manual. Today, we're talking about some of the other offers that are out there related to overcoming porn addiction, why we've adopted and found it beneficial with some of the beliefs, philosophies, and approaches we've taken. Yeah, why we're passionate about it, why we think what we do. And this was really spurred on by a text we got from a team member this week. One of our newest coaches on our team, Jason, who was talking to a Catholic priest who referred him to a organization that priest had been referring other guys to, with some interesting beliefs and ideas about porn, its role, that got us thinking and made us want to talk about that today. So I'm going to read the text we got verbatim, and then we'll start to break down some of this stuff as we've seen and experienced it. As we often say internally and externally, we're not experts. We love learning from the experts and then bringing that to the everyman, because that's who we are. Guys with some educational background and experience, a thirst for knowledge and evidence, a deep hunger for faith and integration in our lives, and an understanding that a lot of times we learn best from getting what's delivered by a doctor or some expert out there in a way that we can hear and understand. It's how we learn best, and it's how we found the guys we work with learning best. And that's what we try to deliver every single day, but also not twist and turn and get too far off track from what's actually true. So we spend a ton of our time researching, poring over the data, if you will, reading the books, taking the courses so that you don't have to. And that's what we try to put into our programs and processes and the systems we deploy, the offers that we have for guys, so that they can just go there and find the wealth of information from the cosmos, if you will, from all the people out there that we really believe are on top of this stuff. So I'm going to read this text. I want to get your initial reaction to it, Nick. What the first time when you saw this land in your inbox, because it was shared in a group text, kind of what sat with you, what did you react to? And then we'll dive into a few of these parts before we close out our time today. So here's the text message. A priest just told me he is glad to learn about the Freedom Group. He had been sending people to this other group. Not horrible, some similarities, some really good resources, but not a great resource for a priest to be sending people to, in the priest's opinion. They are porn neutral, they say. It's not good, it's not bad. They have scientific research associated with their process to back their perspective, but the scientific research seems a little wonky or out there. And the neuroscience evidence is mixed on the effect of porn on the brain. Quote, no data has demonstrated that porn is different from any other liked activity or object, i.e. cuddling puppies, watching a sunset, eating sugar, drugs, etc. Porn neutral.
Yeah.
No data, scientific research that feels a little wonky to the average viewer. What was your reaction when you saw this text?
Yeah, that's good. I love that they threw in, my initial reaction was I just love that they threw in cuddling puppies as on the same plane as drugs and watching a sunset and eating sugar. Yeah, I mean, my initial thought was, I mean, this is what distinguishes SA from SAA, Sexaholics Anonymous versus Sex Addicts Anonymous, where SA has a very clear line, which is really helpful because when you're the arbiter of your own moral compass, we have a phenomenal ability to deceive ourselves on what is right, what is wrong, when do I know if I'm actually crossing the line or not. So SA has a very clear line, which is really helpful. And when you're all on the same page, when you come into a room, there's just some sort of camaraderie and commonality and a culture that can be built around that. When you are involved in SAA, it's just so much more fluid. So basically, SAA's approach is very similar, it sounds like, to this movement or this group's approach, which is you define it for yourself. You define where your line is. And it's important for us to actually be specific. You know, it's going to look different in all of our lives, certainly. But if, you know, sleeping with, men or women is okay for you, then, and that's not crossing up your boundary, then that's okay. It's just SAA gives a lot more freedom and certainly relativism to it. And it just creates this loose, I think certainly less, to use like masculine in the sense of how I think Jordan Peterson talks about, with like an archetype of the masculine, which is order. It creates a less structured masculine space, which can just lead to lack of clarity and lack of direction. So that's the first thing that popped into my head with regards to this porn neutral. To be honest, I haven't taken a deep dive into what all they mean, and I'm sure there's, some dynamics that they're considering, but I think that phrase porn neutral kind of tells you everything you need to know about, is it good or is it bad? And this is honestly just one more thing before I stop riffing here, is when I've heard, and recently I listened to, my wife started going to a new doctor, Dr. Gillette. He's local, and we actually just found out he's been on the Huberman podcast twice. And one I was listening to on male hormones, and Huberman's super science. And to the degree that science can facilitate and help us understand how God has created, you said the cosmos, we'd say reality, the human person certainly, to the degree that it helps you understand that, it's super helpful, I think. But Huberman, I think, kind of pulls back from how, he would sometimes say it's not as conclusive as Dr. Gillette would say it's very conclusive, that how bad porn is for the brain and the body. The science is out there. And I just appreciate when somebody takes a stand like this Dr. Gillette, by way of example, versus it can kind of be like, it's just, Huberman and I appreciate that. Let's not moralize things too much, but he sometimes, when he doesn't moralize it, or it has no, like, where do you plant the flag? Mm-hmm. Where's the stance? Where is the boundary? Where is the right and wrong? And not even right and wrong, but just healthy and not healthy. Is that making sense, what I'm saying there at the end?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there's some needed context there as you're sharing that. My mind goes to, okay, well, Huberman's definition of addiction, beware of anything that rewards your dopamine centers in your brain without effort or sacrifice.
Right.
Is kind of the definition. I mean, it is built into the very fabric of what pornography is. So discussing whether or not pornography is moral or not in its objectivity, like, is looking up at a pornographic picture or film objectively bad? Or do you just need to do it as a reward after you go on a long run,
right.
Or like achieve something to be able to then give that to yourself? Is porn the issue, or is it the lack of effort and sacrifice required to get what sexuality does for the brain in the way that God designed it to do, as in sort of an ultimate reward for the brain, right?
Yeah.
And is that problematic? And I mean, Huberman has said, as many others have, and I think research is pretty clear on this issue, that it is particularly in the way that it is used today by the 85% of people in the U.S. that self-report, 85% of men that self-report viewing pornography at least once a month, aren't doing it on the other end of some extraordinary effort or sacrifice. They're doing it because they're bored, lonely, tired, anxious, stressed, etc. And so they're doing it to get the cheap pleasure, that life, that reality isn't rewarding. And that's a problem to the human experience. It's an artificial, and the more and more you give that to yourself, the less and less your brain wants to go to the harder things to get that same level of pleasure, and addiction forms based on that as a result. And so is addiction a guaranteed end of using pornography once? The answer would be no, just in the same way that drinking once or drugs once. But context, age, environment, and experience, more than all of those, play in whether or not your brain forms an exorbitant mind and life-altering attachment to that thing.
Right.
And so to that end, I would say that porn isn't neutral in the same way that alcohol isn't neutral. Alcohol's bad for you. That's really, you can decide whether or not you want to use alcohol in, quote, moderation, but even moderate alcohol use is bad for your cells over time. And so you can decide whether or not you want to do that. Now, again, alcohol as the example here, does it elicit the same dramatic effect that viewing porn and then masturbating actually provides? And I think it's a really interesting discussion then about pornography in general. Why do we view porn? Right? Why does anyone view porn? I mean, fundamentally, it's to heighten the stimulus and the height of dopamine that you will get when you climax through masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's ultimately it's an aid to a searching behavior,
right,
based on the way that we are wired as sensory beings to the ultimate reward, which is the thing that's built into us, which is using our sexual organs to climax. And that the intensity of that experience is sort of self-modulated by how long we view porn, the type of porn we view, and how rewarding that is. And that's oftentimes what gets habituated and desensitized over the time, and why there's this dramatic escalation of the type of porn, the length of time someone views porn, the extreme porn that they need to view. Huberman has some great stuff that he's brought forward about the close proximity of pain and pleasure centers in the brain, and how oftentimes violent porn is associated with this confluence of pain, the pleasure associated with the cessation of pain, the removal of pain.
Yep.
And this stuff is messing up those long-standing biological and neurological areas of our brain.
Interesting.
And we don't, because of the advent of the internet in our lifetime, we don't know the generational effect that's going to have in the way that human brains get rewired and exist 200 years from now. I think most scientists would agree it's a not super positive hypothesis of what is happening to our brains. Attention spans being decreased, dopamine centers being fried, etc. Which, again, is porn neutral or not? Well, pornography, in terms of, we know that phones are addictive, and if pornography is the most dopamine producing thing that a person could view on that phone that's addictive to begin with, I think we could well argue that pornography is not neutral, in the same way that I think we should argue that phone use isn't neutral. Are you going to decide to stop using your phone? Well, probably for most people, probably not, but it's not neutral, right?
Right. And that's good. So point number one, where we differentiate or separate ourselves from this group, is we do not believe that porn is a neutral. It doesn't just exist. It rewires your brain, reshapes desires, destroys your capacity for intimacy, which is meant to be a gift to others and ultimately can lead to enslavement. And then I think another point that I already kind of alluded to is that science matters. It's important, but truth matters more. Like a true anthropology, our anthropology is Catholic, which I love that word Catholic. Lowercase c, Catholic means according to the whole, a whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And that's why I've loved partnering with you, Joe, is, your background in education is in neuroscience. My background education is in physiology, specifically exercise physiology. And we've both navigated the spirit world for so long that it's vitally important to see the person that we are dealing with and we're working with as a whole person, body, mind, and spirit, or body, soul, and spirit, you could say. First Thessalonians 5:23 is, we often say it, is, well, I could riff it, but you got to memorize that God will, the one, how does it go? Body, mind, and spirit. I know he says it in there. Give me the quote. Give me the scripture.
If the God who is whole and holy will make you whole and holy, put you together, body, mind, and spirit. Right. If he said it, he'll do it.
He'll do it. He'll do it. And so it's really, science, if we're not careful, can create a sort of one-dimensional, particularly in the Western world, a one-dimensional view of the human person. What do I mean by that? It's we can look at chemical levels in the body and adjust those. But if we just view, there's two ends of the spectrum that C.S. Lewis warns about in the Screw Tape Letters, the magician and the materialist. The magician, where everything's hyper spiritual and everything's spirit, and the matter, the materialist, everything is matter. And those are two ends of the spectrum. So back to the point about truth matters more. Science is important, but truth matters more. Viewing the human according to the whole. I love that. May the God who is whole, W-H-O-L-E, and holy, make you whole and holy. And he sees us with the end in mind. Yep. And to see the people we're working with kind of at the end of the race with the trophy in hand, as the Father sees us, and as he sees us, he sees Jesus within us as a whole person. And so if we don't start with that as a foundation, that we're not just disembodied spirits and we're not just carnal primates. Certainly we have mammalian effects that are very similar to us and other mammals that have finite souls, but with an infinite soul. So just all that to say, we integrate neuroscience, but we filter it through scripture, through church teaching, through the theology of the body, which we're just continuing to still unpack the theology of the body, this bombshell that JP2 dropped 30 years ago, and we're still unpacking it today. And we've seen it actually work in real life. So there's just a great danger in just focusing. And I just appreciate how you opened us up today, Joe, how we don't pretend to be the experts, but we're trying to capture everything that we've experienced and seen and worked with and what's worked for us, and to kind of package it and bring it together and offer it. Like, okay, that's a great concept. How does that actually work in my
Yep. No fluff, just the stuff.
Just the stuff, baby.
Just the stuff. Yeah. As you're talking, my mind goes back to we measure the science, or we bounce the science off faith. And I think vice versa as well, is like, where is there evidence in creation of what it says in Scripture, right? Because if Scripture is true, I should be able to find it here.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
And that can get weird.
Totally.
But I don't think it needs to, and I think it's an important part of what it looks like for us to become whole and holy, for us to become integrated persons, to be able to do both. Reading Dr. Patrick Carn's book, this is the most vivid example of sort of like, holy cow, Scripture and tradition teaches this stuff, and we found it in the brain. In his book, Out of the Shadows, he talks about these 3 pathways in the brain. In talking specifically about porn or digital sexual addiction in particular, compared to sex as sexual intercourse with one committed partner, as his definition.
Okay.
Right? There's these 3 pathways: animal drive pathway, the romance pathway, and the attachment pathway. Right?
Say those again.
The animal drive pathway, largely modulated by dopamine.
Okay.
This is just the drive we have to reproduce. The carnal drive we have to reproduce, right?
Yep.
The romance pathway, and it's this confluence of many positive neurochemicals. And he says at the moment of climax, this romance pathway, as it's activated, creates a confluence and a level of these neurochemicals so intense that a person experiences a moment of insanity.
Huh.
It's so cool. And then the attachment pathway, which is largely modulated by the neurochemical, and now I'm blanking on it, but the neurochemical that a mom experiences with a baby.
Serotonin?
I'll remember it. Huh?
Is it serotonin?
No. I'll think of it eventually, and I'll throw it out when I do. But it bonds people together. It's a neurochemical that's sole goal is to bond people together. And husband experiences it with wife, partners experience it together, right? It's kind of the neurochemical basis for like the idea of soul ties. Like, does that exist or not?
Right.
Like there is a neurochemical in your body defined to attach you to other people. And so when you give yourself away, that matters, right? And it's not just a spiritual reality. That is a neurological reality. Those things are that doesn't mean that it's not a spiritual reality. That's always that it doesn't matter in this.
Yep.
It means that it's reflective
Totally.
and complementary with the spiritual reality and realm. So these are these three pathways: animal drive pathway, romance, and attachment. Right. Well, what does the church stand on when it comes to sexual relationships or marriage, reproduction, sacramental, and unitive? Right? These are the three pillars of that type of relationship that need to be an active part of that type of relationship to consider it the ideal, right? What are we aiming for? Reproduction, animal drive pathway, sacramental, this mirroring imaging, a heightened moment of insanity that you would, he says in the book, where you would be willing to die for your partner without pause. That's what that kind of insanity, if you experienced it all time, would create in you. Where do we see that image? Jesus' sacrifice on the cross.
Yeah.
Right? The ultimate romance.
Holy cow.
This unitive, the attachment pathway, bonding together, right?
Yeah.
And this is the fascinating thing. And this is, again, going back to the first and second part of our conversation today, is that the only time when these three pathways are all positively grown together, reinforced together, is in sexual intercourse with one committed partner.
Wow.
I think that's crazy. Our brain knows how to divide a one-night stand and what to wire that towards to reinforce that happening more often than sexual intercourse with one committed partner. And it's also no more dramatically, the gap between this and that is no more dramatically found than how the brain is reinforced. Those pathways are positively or negatively reinforced when it comes to digital sexual addiction or pornography use, right? So the effect on the person's brain isn't just a matter of dopamine system issue. When a person uses porn, it negatively affects the use of the attachment pathway and the romance pathway. It dampens them. It unwires them from the animal drive pathway.
Wow.
So the drive, the more you use pornography, is just simply to reproduce. So you become more like an animal, right? You become more governed.
It's not just a metaphor.
Right. You become more governed by this pathway that becomes stronger and stronger, but without the strength of the romance and the attachment pathways. And in relationship, as we certainly could be able to diagnose or discuss here, obviously plays out, right? In the way that would affect somebody's capacity, our capacity to be able to develop healthy relationships if you have a dampened ability to be able to romance and to attach, because of the frequency to which you use pornography to cope as a meaningful solution to your problems. So the animal drive, the romance, and the attachment pathway mirror the reproduction, sacramental, and unitive pillars of sexual relationships and the call to marriage that the church holds as sacred. And I think it's my favorite example because I think it is so vivid, so unmistakable. And it matters not just because the pathways exist, but because of the type of relationship and sexual relationship you have and the way that it reinforces those pathways growing together. So when you have, I'll land the plane by saying this, when you have sexual intercourse with one committed partner, animal drive pathway gets used, is released, electricity and neurochemical is released in that pathway and is strengthened at the same time that the romance pathway is used and strengthened and the attachment pathway is used and strengthened. On porn, the animal drive pathway is used and strengthened. Dopamine is high. That neural circuitry is used, but the other two are not used, so they become more unreinforced together. They don't wire together, right? That's the whole idea of neuroplasticity. What wires together, or what fires together, wires together. When they fire together at the same time, they become wired together. The dendrites, which are like the arms, the tiny arms of a neuron,
dendrites.
That's right. Start extending out to the other neurons that are firing in order to create associations with those neurons. And that how you experience this. And so, again, going back to the first, landing the plane on the second, reinforcing then the third is that porn use matters for more than just freedom to just stop the bad behavior of pornography. It dampens your ability to experience the depth and reward that was placed within us for human connection, for conversation, for seeing a sunset and being able to appreciate the dopamine reward of its beauty, to be able to cuddle a puppy and find that be fulfilling. That matters.
Yeah.
I think going back to your point about like the vision is that getting to the third point is that freedom, it really isn't about neutrality. Like, we'll just figure out what makes you feel good and do it. It's like, what is the objective ideal to you that you're aspiring to? And a fair amount of that is going to suck, right? Choose your hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah. Pick your damn suffering, as Peterson says.
Right. And so choose it.
Yeah.
Choose it. That's a part. It's not just, well, where do you find pleasure? And choose that more often than you do the one that you feel ashamed about on the other end. It's no, like, this is going to be really hard. Getting to the ultimate reward is challenging. That's not a neutral thing, right? But I also think it produces, as we see evidence of reward along the way, produces the kind of deep hope that causes the brain to constantly choose the hard because we know the long-term payoff is worth it. That's starting from ground zero in the world we're in, immediate gratification, 16 to 30-second attention spans, et cetera.
Right.
Simply requires, and this is really what we're all about in the Freedom Group, is intentionality, right? It requires intention.
Yep.
Shut off your phone for a freaking weekend like I did a couple weekends ago and realize you can do it. Fast for 72 hours from food and drink water only. You can do it.
Yep.
And doing either of those things isn't just good for your body and brain, it's also deeply rewarding for your soul and vice versa.
Yep. Golly, man, that was freaking gold. I started crying at a certain point. I don't remember which point, but I think it was just like this experience I was having of just this awe of how God has woven everything together. Like, I mean, just the sacramentality of it. Like, I love it. It's like, if it's true in the spirit, it's true in the, I mean, that's a Catholic sacramental worldview. It's manifest. Mm-hmm. We don't have this dualistic worldview where there's a separation of the two. There's the invisible and the visible, and the two overlap.
Yep.
That book by Patrick Carnes, what was it?
Out of the Shadows.
Holy cow. So good. So 1, porn's not neutral. 2, science matters, but truth and how God has created reality matters more. And freedom isn't just about avoiding something and not doing something, as we said before, but it's found in becoming whole, being transformed. The goal isn't just to make peace with your sinfulness and your cravings, but it's to be restored, to be reintegrated. This thing, I mean, the word that came to mind earlier as you were talking, just when you just do the porn thing and your animalistic drive is increased and just to another level, is there's a disintegration of the human person. And the Hebrew word, the science word we use is integration. That's a regular, and I love the word, but the Hebrew word is shalom. The restoration of all things, the reintegration of the heavens and the earth, and myself reconnecting with myself, and myself with others, and myself in creation. It's just the goal, and freedom is as much about holiness as it is about wholeness and becoming who we know we're called to be. So,
yeah, that's so good.
This is rich, man.
And we say often on discovery calls, or when we have the sacred opportunity to be able to talk to men about their journey and their struggle and where they're at today, is we don't care if you do our thing. We don't. Just don't do nothing. Right. But we'd also encourage today to think twice and to challenge and to think deeply if you get into a environment, into a context where the goal is to help you just manage behavior.
Right.
Hide the remotes in the car when you go to stay at a hotel for the rest of your life. That's the goal. That's the requirement. That's the boundary. And you can't have it any other way because you are an addict. Lower the bar by normalizing porn. Yeah, we don't know if porn's good or bad. It's science is out, jury's out. Who knows? You decide. And if it focuses only on habit change without exploring context for how you got there, why you got there, the story behind it, but often also to the healing that you need, body, mind, and spirit, because all of you has been affected. And so all of you needs to heal. And that's what we really attempt and try to do in every guy we work with, in every group we lead, is to help eliminate craving, to cycle off of craving, to rewire the brain, to retrain the brain. Brain training has become this increasingly popular term and idea. There's all kinds of headwear and applications you can get to neurofeedback, and some of that is really legit. It's
cool stuff.
Don't say that to put it down, but that's what we're after, is to retrain the brain so that the brain reacts to old stimulus in the way a normal, healthy brain, an unaddicted brain, would respond to it. And when you do that, you can choose the good in every moment for the rest of your life. And it can be relatively easy to see it, to let go of it, and to move on with your life. And to guys that like ourselves have experienced the throes of addiction, that sounds pretty freaking amazing. And so we want to encourage you, as ones who have gone before you, that you can have it if you engage the right process. So, and then healing emotional roots and identity wounds, et cetera, is super important to that process. And learning to walk in your spiritual and God-given authority, right? Freedom for, not freedom from. We've said it frequently here and other places before. We love Dan Allender's belief or idea about any healing, transformation, freedom work, is that it's not just for the sake of healing, freedom, or transformation. It's so that you can take up the kingdom that has been conferred on you by the King, right? When Jesus gave us dominion and authority over the earth, he handed you the keys. And if you abdicate responsibility for the kingdom he's handed you, your kingdom gets smaller, one, as you begin to close in on yourself. And so you lose ground, you lose territory, and the world is affected by that you vacating that territory. And so it's about expansion, but it's also about your capacity to be able to rule it well, which is fundamentally so often learning to be able to engage discomfort and grow through that process. And that was one of the most fundamental things I had to learn, is to develop a deep understanding that I had become allergic to problems and challenges and pain in my life, to discomfort, because of the role that porn played as an easy button out of emotional discomfort and other environmental events and discomfort. So I didn't learn how to grow through them. And the compounding effect of not engaging pornography as a fake artificial solution, an illegitimate act, as we talked about last week, to fill that legitimate need, has not only provided the need for me and for other men, but it's also given me the capacity to live, which is really freaking rewarding. So the evidence for why this matters is all around us. Men need to step up and live and lead and begin to thrive in who they are, rather than simply to survive in a career until they can retire and then wait till they die. That's not a hell of a life plan. And we desperately want, in our pursuit and what we're building here in the Freedom Group, in helping guys get free from the craving to porn and helping guys develop an operating system for their life for purpose, is to accomplish just that, to live a life of magnanimity and vibrancy that becomes a magnet for the world around you, because it's relatively easy to do, because there's not a lot of it, as I'm sure many of our listeners can attest to, around you. But the challenge stops with you then. Will you begin to live that kind of way? Will you begin to surround yourselves with the kind of people that can help you deal with the fears and the anxiety and the avoidance and resistance that comes up in you, and doing that consistently enough so that it could become true of you? That's what we're here to do. If you're listening and you've tried other programs that left you managing symptoms instead of healing the root, you're not crazy. There's been a fair number of guys that came to us and have tried a few things, and they're like, I still use every week. I'm still struggling. It's not working. Hiding my remotes in my car doesn't stop the problem. Hiding my phone, locking down the phone just isn't working. It causes more frustration than it does friction, and I delete it. Right? You're just ready for something real. And that's what we've sold out our lives, quit our other jobs, gone all in to be able to build and create for as many men as we can in our lifetimes, is real, meaningful solutions to get to the end. And we're trying to put our money where our mouth is in that regard, by working with men to get free in a year or less, or we work with you completely free until you are. So we're hope aggressive, and we believe we can that you can live without cravings because we've tasted it first. We believe you can live without shame because it's really freaking good to live a life without shame and experience that in our own lives and without compromise. And again, that doesn't mean perfection. It means you're able to live more honestly and tell people when you're not doing well or when things aren't going well, because you don't have to compulsively hide because things are broken or in shambles in the background. So just invite you to check us out. If this is stirring in you to take the bold step to be able to hop on a discovery call with us, no obligation. We'd love to talk about your story, your journey, your experience. We got 3 freedom groups starting here in August, so definitely check us out. And if porn isn't the issue for you, but you can sense there's a gap between your dream outcome, who you want to become, and where you are today, we built the Kingmakers community to do just that, to provide a place where you can intentionally build an operating system for your life and have the accountability and support to actually do it. Find us on social media, wherever you hang out, and hopefully you don't hang out there all that much and you're living real life, and let's find a way to hang out in real life too, because that'd be great. All right, y'all, that's it for us this week on The Manual. He's Nick. I'm Joe. Peace.
Peace.